It started with nothing unusual, which is probably why I remember it so clearly. I'd been going to the same coffee shop for weeks, half out of habit, half because I didn't know what else to do with my mornings. 22 and already carrying the kind of silence that made people wonder if you were waiting for someone. I wasn't. Not really. I was just waiting to feel like the day had a reason. That's when I noticed her. She was in her 40s, maybe mid-polished in a way that wasn't loud. Blouse tucked neatly into a skirt, glasses she sometimes took off and set on the table as if they weighed too much. She had the kind of presence you'd expect in an office hallway, not in a place that smelled of burnt beans and sugar syrup. Later I learned she was a secretary at some firm down the street. For now, she was just the woman who sat 2 tables away and never looked rushed, even when she clearly was. The first time she glanced at me, it was quick, polite. But then it happened again the next morning. And the next. The kind of eye contact that feels like an accident until it starts to feel like a habit. "Black coffee, right?" she said one day, voice low but steady, like she'd been thinking it over before speaking. I blinked. "Yeah. How'd you?" "You always hesitate like you're going to order something else. Then you don't." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because no one had ever said it out loud. My friends used to tease me for being predictable, but hearing it from her mouth, watching the way her lips pressed together after, as if she regretted speaking, made it feel different. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I folded the edge of the napkin on my table, again and again, until it looked like a crease someone would iron out later. She noticed. I knew she noticed. "You're here early," I said finally. "Too many calls waiting for me at the office. This is the only pause I get." She said it like a confession, and I realized I was holding my breath. After that, the silences between us grew shorter. She would tell me small things, how the elevator in her building was always a little too slow, how her boss mispronounced her name even after years. I told her almost nothing, but she didn't seem to mind. She had a way of making the air feel less empty, even when I spoke in half sentences. Sometimes I caught myself staring at her hands, the way she held her cup with both, even when it wasn't hot anymore, or the way she tapped her nail against the ceramic when she was thinking. Once, she brushed a stray hair from her cheek, and I had to look away quickly, pretending to check my phone. The screen was empty, of course, just unsent texts sitting in drafts, things I didn't have the nerve to send to anyone. It was on a Thursday near closing that she surprised me. She stood, adjusted her bag on her shoulder, then paused by my table. "You're quiet," she said. Not an insult, more like an observation. I nodded. "Yeah, I guess. You should come by earlier tomorrow. I might actually get a seat." She smiled before walking out. I didn't move until the door shut behind her, the little bell above it sounding sharper than usual. When I finally checked my phone, I saw a message I didn't remember typing. "Do you want to sit together next time?" My thumb hovered over send, and for the first time in a long while I didn't feel like deleting it. The next morning I went earlier just like she'd said. I pretended it was coincidence, but she didn't look surprised when I walked in. Her seat was taken, though. Only one chair sat open at my table. She stood there with her coffee, tilting her head like she was weighing the consequences of something so small and yet not small at all. "Mind if I pushed my notebook aside. "Yeah, of course." She sat across from me, carefully, as though she'd been warned against it. The table was too small. Her sleeve brushed mine when she shifted. She smelled faintly of something floral. Not perfume, exactly, but maybe detergent, maybe the ghost of her morning shower. For a while, we didn't say anything, just sips and half-formed glances. Then she spoke quietly. "My son's your age." It was one of those truths people drop into a conversation like a stone into water, rippling long after the sound is gone. I nodded slowly, trying not to react too much. "He doesn't talk to me much anymore," she added. "That's normal, I guess." I don't talk to my mom much either," I admitted before I could stop myself. "Not really about anything that matters." Her eyes lingered on me then, as if she'd caught me off guard without meaning to. Something softened in her expression, though she said nothing. That silence was heavier than words. I wanted to ask questions. About her son, about her life. But instead I found myself staring at the tiny crease forming at the corner of her eye when she looked down at her cup. And suddenly the coffee shop felt too public, like someone might see exactly what I was trying not to feel. The risk was there, unspoken but loud. She was twice my age, maybe more. Someone's mother. Someone's secretary. If my friends knew, they'd laugh. If her coworkers knew, they'd judge. And yet here she was, sitting at my table like it had been hers all along. I imagined the story in my head, her telling me about her day, me walking her home, maybe her hand brushing mine on accident. The pictures came too easily, like a film reel I couldn't shut off. And when I caught myself, guilt followed fast behind. She noticed me tapping the side of my cup nervously, the way I do when I can't say what I want. "You think too much," she said gently. "Yeah, bad habit." Her smile wasn't big, just enough to crease her lips, just enough to make me feel like she was letting me in on a secret no one else got. We stayed longer than either of us needed to. When she finally stood to leave, she reached over, light, almost nothing, and brushed the edge of the napkin I'd been folding to pieces. Her finger barely touched mine. It was nothing, absolutely nothing. But I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I thought she might not show up the next morning. Maybe she'd reconsider, realize how it looked. Her sitting across from someone young enough to be her son. But she came. Late this time, her hair slightly damp from the rain, glasses fogged. "You're early again," she said, sliding into the chair without waiting for me to offer. "Habit," I murmured. Though the truth was, I'd been checking the door every 5 minutes, pretending I wasn't. The shop was quieter than usual, the hum of the espresso machine louder against the low murmur of voices. I noticed the way she brushed rain off her sleeve, how her hand lingered a second too long on the edge of the table, almost close enough to mine. But something was different. She was distracted, fingers tracing the rim of her cup without lifting it. "Everything okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away, just sighed, shook her head. Then, quietly, "I don't know why I sit here with you." My throat tightened. "Do you not want to?" Her eyes flicked up, sharp, then softened. "That's not what I said." Silence again, heavy this time. My chest ached with words I couldn't say, questions I shouldn't ask. The bell above the door rang and I flinched, half expecting someone I knew. It was just a man in a suit, but still my pulse quickened. The thought of being seen, of having to explain, pressed down hard. She noticed. "You're worried," she said quietly. Not accusing, just seeing. I laughed under my breath, a broken sound. "A little. So am I." That admission hung there between us. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that no one would care, but even in my head the words rang false. Did matter. It mattered too much. We sat in that charged silence until the shop grew busier, students and office workers filling seats around us. A friend of mine from class walked in, spotted me, raised a hand. I froze. She noticed and shifted slightly, putting her hair between us like a curtain. My friend ordered, didn't linger, but the tension didn't leave. When it thinned out again, she leaned forward just a little. Her voice dropped. "We should be careful." I nodded, though I hated how it sounded. Careful meant distance. Careful meant pretending none of this mattered. The rain had stopped by the time we stood to leave. Outside, the air was damp, carrying that sharp, post-storm clarity. She opened her umbrella anyway, though she didn't need to, and for a second I thought she might offer to walk me part way. Instead, she hesitated, looked at me like she wanted to say something more. My hand twitched at my side, half reaching before I caught myself. She did the same. We didn't touch. Not really. Just leaned closer in the pause, breaths almost meeting before she stepped back. "Tomorrow," she said softly. Then she was gone. And all the way home, I kept replaying how close we'd come to crossing a line neither of us was ready to admit existed. It happened after work, though I wasn't supposed to see her then. I'd been wandering downtown, pretending to have errands, when I spotted her across the street. Not in office clothes this time, just a cardigan, hair loose, walking like she was in no rush. I almost didn't call out, but my feet moved faster than my head. "Hey!" She turned, startled at first, then smiled like she'd been caught in the middle of something private. "You're still around?" "Yeah." I had time. We ended up walking together, neither of us saying where we were going. Just side by side, steps sinking without trying. The city was loud, but between us it felt muted, like we carried a bubble of quiet. After a few blocks, she stopped at a bench under a tree that had started shedding leaves. "Let's sit." I nodded, grateful. My chest had been too tight from holding everything in. For a while, it was nothing but cars rushing past, wind tugging at her hair. She folded her hands in her lap, then unfolded them, restless. I noticed because my own hands were just as restless. Then she said it. "You shouldn't look at me the way you do." My stomach dropped. "I don't." "You do." Her voice wasn't sharp, just tired, like the truth had been pressing against her for too long. I looked down at my shoes, heat crawling up my neck. "Maybe I can't help it." She exhaled slowly, leaning back against the bench. "You remind me of something I lost, or maybe something I missed." I didn't know what to say to that. Every word felt either too much or not enough. So I just sat there, fists pressed into my knees, wishing I had the courage to tell her she wasn't wrong about me, about the way I looked at her. Finally, I managed, "I don't want to make things harder for you." Her laugh was quiet, brittle. "Too late for that." The silence stretched. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. She wanted to look away, but she didn't. We just sat there with the weight of it all pressing down, heavier than the evening air. She turned then, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Do you ever wonder what people would think?" "All the time." My voice cracked. "But right now I don't care." Her lips parted, like she was about to answer, but no words came. Just a pause, stretched and trembling, right before the point of no return. I leaned forward without meaning to, close enough to catch the faint warmth of her breath. She didn't move away, and in that space, heartbeat against heartbeat, the only question left was the one neither of us dared to ask. The next morning I went early again. Too early. The shop was nearly empty, chairs still stacked on tables at the back. I sat by the window waiting for her. She didn't come. At first, I told myself she was late. Meetings, traffic, a slow elevator. But by the time my coffee went cold, I knew. The following day, she still wasn't there. I tried not to stare at the door every time it opened, but my body didn't listen. Each stranger who walked in only reminded me of her absence. It wasn't heartbreak. Not yet. Just a kind of suspension, like someone had pressed pause on a film I'd been lost inside. On the third day, I saw her. Not in the shop. On the street. She was walking fast, talking into her phone, her bag slipping from her shoulder. I almost called out, almost fell back into the orbit I'd gotten used to. But then I heard what she said, just a fragment as she passed. "No, I can't tonight. He'll be home." I froze. I hadn't asked about her family since the day she mentioned her son. She never offered more and I never pushed. But now the word home burned in my chest. He'll be home. A husband? No. She didn't wear a ring. But maybe an ex. Maybe something unfinished. That night, I drafted a message. "Are you okay? Did I do something?" I didn't send it. I typed, erased, typed again. Left the screen glowing in the dark. The next morning, her seat was still empty. When she finally appeared, it was different. No smile, no pause at the counter to joke about my predictable order. She looked tired, drawn in a way makeup couldn't fix. "You're here," I said, trying to keep it light. "Yeah, just that." She sat down, but farther away than usual, diagonal, not across from me. Her hands stayed wrapped around her cup like a shield. I wanted to ask what changed. I wanted to demand answers I had no right to. Instead, I said, "Long week." She nodded, didn't meet my eyes. The conversation never found its rhythm. We tripped over silences, let them sit too long. When she finally stood to leave, she touched my shoulder lightly, too lightly, and said, "Take care, okay? Not see you tomorrow. Not same time. Just that." After she left, I stared at the empty chair across from me, the one that had started to feel like hers. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It wasn't planned. I wasn't even sure if I should knock. Her apartment light was on, warm against the dark. I'd walked past her building twice already, rehearsing reasons I had no right to use. When I finally buzzed, it was instinct, not courage. She opened the door in a cardigan, hair tied back, glasses slipping low. For a second, her face went through 3 expressions: surprise, hesitation, then something softer. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice low. "I know," I admitted. My chest was tight, words fighting to stay hidden. But I didn't want to keep wondering if we... She stepped aside without answering. I slipped in. The place was small but neat, the kind of order people keep when they've had to rebuild. A mug sat half-finished on the counter. Papers stacked on the table. Life lived alone. We stood in her kitchen, the hum of the fridge louder than it should have been. I leaned against the wall, hands shoved deep in my pockets. "You disappeared," I said finally. She looked down at her mug. "I thought it was better." "Better for who?" Her lips pressed tight. "Then, for you. You're young. You don't know what you want yet. And Her voice faltered. "I can't be the mistake you regret later." Something inside me snapped. Not anger, just the weight of weeks unsaid. "You're not a mistake." The words landed harder than I meant, hanging in the air like they might break something. She turned, eyes glistening, but not with tears, with restraint. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I've lived long enough to know how this ends." I stepped closer, though every nerve told me not to. "Then let me not understand for once. Just let me be here." She laughed, short and tired, rubbing her temples. "You make it sound so easy." It's not easy. I think about it all the time. What people would say. What I'd lose. What you'd lose. My voice cracked on the last part. But I still keep coming back. She finally looked at me, really looked. Something in her softened, like a wall easing down one brick at a time. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, she reached out. Not to hold me, not even to close the space. Just her hand, brushing the edge of my sleeve. Barely there. I didn't grab it. I didn't lean in. I just let it stay. "Okay," she whispered. That was all. No grand declarations. No promises. Just the smallest word, carrying everything we hadn't said. And in that silence, standing in her kitchen with the hum of the fridge, it felt like enough. Time didn't shift all at once. It stretched, bent, folded into small patterns that felt ordinary enough to hide how much had changed. We never made an announcement. No sudden labels, no declarations. Just a new rhythm. Some mornings I still went to the coffee shop early, ordering the same black coffee. But now, when the door opened, she didn't hesitate. She sat without asking, her tea steaming beside my cup. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just sat, letting the silence do the work. Other days I'd meet her after work. Sometimes we walked, ending up back at the same bench under the tree. The one where she told me I shouldn't look at her the way I did. Now she'd tease me about staring too much, then fall quiet, brushing leaves off her lap like she didn't mind at all. Her apartment became less foreign too. At first, I stood in the doorway like I didn't belong. Later, I started leaving things behind. My notebook, a pen, once even a sweatshirt she never returned. She brewed tea, I stuck to coffee, but we learned to share the silence of her kitchen without it feeling heavy. There were moments of doubt. Times when she'd pull back, her eyes clouding over with what-ifs. Times when I'd wonder if she was right, if I'd look back one day and call it a mistake. But each time, we found our way back to the small truths. The laugh she couldn't hide when I got flustered. The way I noticed her shoulders relax when she let me carry her bag. Nothing dramatic happened. No one found us out. No scandal unfolded. Life just made space. It was on a Tuesday morning, 8:47 a.m., the time stamped forever in my memory, that I realized. She slid into the seat across from me, brushed rain from her sleeve, and smiled like we'd been doing this for years. And maybe, in a way, we had. I don't know if what we built would look like love to anyone else. Maybe it wouldn't. But to me, it was enough. More than enough. Because the truth is, it never began with a kiss or ended with a promise. It began with a glance across 2 tables, and it ended, well, it didn't end. Settled. Quiet. Steady. Like tea cooling beside black coffee. And sometimes, when she looks at me over the rim of her cup, I think, only we know what this really means. Engagement close. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?